The Club World Cup's group stages have officially begun, and for Chelsea that means a tie against LAFC in matchday 1 later tonight. We have a lot of new players to work with during this tournament, so how do we integrate them properly and get Chelsea a comfortable win? Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome to the Forward Press. Let's look at the Chelsea team first. We are choosing from a squad of 28 players that have travelled to the United States for this tournament, and some notable exclusions from that list include Kendrick Paez, Wesley Fofana, Amari Kellyman, Misha Mudryk, Georgi Petrovic and Matisse Mugu. I'll be putting our Chelsea side into our standard 4-3-3, and we'll talk about how this changes in game in a little bit. Personally, I want to see a nice mixture of experience and youth in this game, so I'll be lining us up with a bit of both. First up in goal will be Robert Sanchez. Though I'd love to see Mike Penders start, I think we'll go with the safer option for now. The back four is going to be pretty strong from the start. Captaining the side is Reece James, who will start at right back. The centre-back partnership is a new one, with new arrival Mamadou Sarr coming in to partner Levi Colwill. Finally, over at left back will be Marc Cucurella as usual, finishing off the back line. Moving into midfield, let's start with the deepest man. I think this will be the perfect opportunity to start new defensive midfielder Dario Asugo. Moises Caicedo is coming off a very long campaign and I'd personally rest him, and Lavia shouldn't be risked considering his injury issues. The two advanced midfielders will be slightly altered from our standard team too. Cole Palmer of course starts, but his partner is up for debate. I'm going to be putting in Andre Santos, who will act a bit more box to box in this game. That just leaves the three attackers, and this will be changing as well. Starting with the right wing, I'd love to put new arrival Estevao in here, but unfortunately for us, he'll be playing for Palmeiras in this tournament instead. So Noni Madueke is the obvious choice here for me. On the opposite side, I have the choice of George or Pedro Neto, and I'm going for the latter. I think his crossing from the left side will suit the man up top better. So let's talk about that man up top, and it's an exciting one because I believe we'll see the debut of new signing Liam Delap, and hopefully the big centre forward can get himself a confidence boosting goal or two. Now let's briefly look at our opponents for tonight. LAFC like to set up in the 4-3-3 for the most part, and that won't change here. There's some familiar faces in the Angels CWC squad, and that starts with their man between the sticks. The first player going into the side will be goalkeeper Hugo Lloris. The Frenchman was acquired from Spurs last season on a free transfer, and he started all but one game for the American outfit. The back four won't be changing much from their last game in the league, as Sergi Palencia starts at right back once again. The centre-back partnership will change slightly though, with captain Aaron Long coming into the side to replace Marlon, alongside Eddie Segura. Finally, the left back will be Ryan Hollingshead, who's retaining his place from the Sporting Kansas City game. Next up is the midfield, and I expect this to stay the exact same as that previous fixture, with Timothy Tillman on the right, Igor Jesus as the 6, and ever-present Mark Delgado on the left. Onto the attackers now, and there's a few more recognisable names here. Starting on the right, I expect to see the Venezuelan youngster David Martinez. On the opposite side will be a man you all know, Gabon international Denis Bouanga. That leaves one man up top, and though I don't think he will start, I want to throw him in for old time's sake anyway. It's former Chelsea striker Olivier Giroud. That's both teams lined up, so now how do Chelsea best their opposition here? Let's find out. Alright, so here we have the two teams, and this is going to be a slightly different preview to the ones we've been doing recently. I'm not going to be going as in-depth with this one because, for the most part, this is a very, very big lapse in quality between the two sides, and for the most part, Chelsea's way to victory will just be play better because we are the better team. What I will do though, as usual, is I'll talk about LAFC's strengths and their weaknesses and see what we can kind of exploit, and also just talk about how the Chelsea setup will work here. Now, the first thing I want to mention immediately, let's talk about the backline now. Obviously, I put in Sanchez as the goalkeeper here. I think that this is the safest option here. I don't have much faith in Jurgensen. I don't think Slanina is ready to play for us. And Penders, though I would love to see him play, and he might play. We've seen from Enzo Maresca's press conference that he says that he's going to be switching players in and out because obviously the heat over in LA is very, 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 very high at the moment in the summer. And so players are going to be swapping in and out. I think that Sanchez is probably the star here, right? I don't think Penders is going to begin, but maybe he gets a substitute appearance, which would be nice. In terms of the backline and the defenders, the only new player I've put in here is Mamadou Sarr. And that's basically because I think that he's a player that needs to be tested. He's a player that needs to obviously, come into the side and see if he's a good fit. And I think that him playing next to Levi Colwill is kind of the best thing for him. And also playing next to James and Cucurella. These are the senior players in this back back line, I think that can integrate him in nice with that experience around him. Obviously, he's a right-sided centre-half, but he can play in the centre, and that's kind of what I would expect to see from him in this game. Now, as we kind of move the team into how it usually operates in-game, we obviously commit one of our fullbacks into the midfield or further up. Now, there's a few options we can actually do here. Obviously, because Levi Cole is usually the player we like to see in the central role, so he could obviously come into the central role with Sarr going wide right and James coming into midfield. That's definitely something we can definitely see, and then Kukurea can obviously be this player that sits back into this left centre-back role. That's definitely something we can see. However, what I'm going to kind of suggest here is something a little bit different. I think that maybe we see Levi Cole go out wide to the left, Sarr can kind of play in the central role where he'll be comfortable, and James stays back as this defensive right centre-back that he's been doing so well in recent games. And obviously what that will do is move Kukurea further up. Now, I speak about this quite often in the terms of our midfield. We like to have a four-man midfield to combat three-man midfields like this, to outnumber them, make it easier to play out, things like that. Obviously, there are two different variants of this. There's the box we can see when we have two holders, and there's the diamond that we see when we want to play just the one holder. And though this might be a bit too much responsibility on Asugo, I think he's good enough to play as this lone player. And because obviously the way that I've set this team up, you can see Palmer is on the left side, which is a bit unusual because on the ball, when we are in this new formation with the three centre backs, he's not going to play on the left side. He'll play central. He'll play as the central cam in the middle, and we'll see Kukurea playing as this left-sided player. We get to see a lot of the time, and this usually happens when we have Enzo on this side as well, that we now have kind of adjusted that 3-2-2-3 into more of a 3-1-3-3, right? We see this quite often with Caicedo being the lone player, and let's not get anything twisted. Caicedo could definitely start this game. I think because of the fitness things, and I just don't want to risk him. You know, he's played a full season. He played every single Premier League game. I would like to see Asugo as well get some, get to grips with the team. And against LAFC, that aren't a very strong team, I'd like to see him kind of, thrown into the deep end and said, hey, show us what you can do. He's obviously a very good defensive player. Whether he can hold this on his own, maybe he needs a little bit of support. And that is partly why I've also put Andre Santos in here, because I feel like he can do two jobs in one. He can obviously drop deep and facilitate this midfield if we need to defend. Obviously, he is a defensive-minded player, but he is box-to-box. He's very good at getting into the box and getting goals and things like that. So that's why I played him on this right side, because I think that he can be the opposite to Kukurea and kind of, be the player that's going to be operating in this channel, where he can get high if he needs to, but he can also drop deep like an Enzo Fernandez would do, and, play that side. Now, maybe he could play on the left-hand side instead. And if he did do this, Palmer would obviously play on this right side and then move in, and that would rotate the team all the way around to the right side, and obviously James would go into midfield, and that would kind of, that would be how we kind of set up. It basically really depends on what Enzo Maresca wants from his team. If he wants more defensive solidity, I assume he'll play James here. If he doesn't really care for that, maybe he commits him forward a little bit too, and then we can kind of see a 2 here with these two. I'm not sure, but for the most part, this is kind of the way we set up, and I would imagine we set up this way. Now, in terms of how the opposition set up, now I've put them into this 4-3-3 because that is technically the way that they line up the majority of the time. However, there has been slight variations of this in their recent games, and also because we are a much better team than the teams that they face in their regular league season, I think they'll play a little bit more pragmatically, at least in terms of their formation. Now, this is obviously a 4-3-3. I imagine what they'll kind of go into is more of a 4-1-4-1, with these two wingers dropping quite deep when we are on the ball, leaving the one player up top. And that's part of the reason why I've also put Olivier Giroud in as the striker here, because obviously he's a player that can kind of deal with things as a lone striker. He can kind of receive balls long and, fight for things, allow his team to get up the pitch from those kind of high pressure or reserved positions, whereas the regular striker that they usually use, Jeremy Obabise, I don't think he's as good at doing this, though he is still a phenomenal striker and he probably will be the player that starts here in truth. I just really want to see Olivier Giroud again. It's a bit of nostalgia, so that's why I've put in here. Although Giroud has been in pretty good scoring form in the last few games, he's been getting goals off the bench, so maybe they decide, hey, you know what, let's give Giroud a go. And again, I'm not really sure how serious LAFC are going to actually take this competition. They are clearly a team that is not going to win it. Of course, because they are just a team that is very, very low quality in comparison to the other big teams in this tournament, like Chelsea, like PSG, for example. I don't think they're really going to go far. So I'm not sure if they're even going to take this seriously because they are in the middle of their season, right? They are about 18, 19 games into their league season at the moment. So I'm not sure if they really want to disrupt that in playing a really, really strong team and kind of, playing the strong teams for all three games and then kind of getting out of sorts, maybe picking up some injuries, stuff like that. So I'm assuming they would also rotate like we were probably going to be doing here. That kind of leads me on to one of the strengths I want to talk about this LAFC team. They have a lot of them, and I'm going to list them off because again, I'm not going too much in depth this time. So instead of focusing on three weaknesses and three strengths like I would usually do, I'm going to talk about quite multiples of them because we're not going to have in-game examples for this video. The first thing I do want to say is that because again they are in the middle of their league season, they are all going to be very, very fit. Obviously, we've had a few kind of weeks break now off after the back of the Premier League season and obviously the Conference League final. So our players are going to be a little bit more lackadaisical, not have the fitness in the legs, whereas these guys have literally been playing like week in week out for the last like 18 weeks. So they're probably going to be a little bit fitter than us, I would say. And again, some of the players that we're bringing in are obviously players that have not played with a team before. So we're going to be a little bit disjointed, I would imagine. I think the focus for Enzo Maresca in this game and in all of these games, really, he said he's not treating it like a preseason. He's going to be treating it more like an actual tournament for the trophy. But I think that's a little bit of white lies from Maresca. I think he's going to use this as an opportunity to test out some of these new guys that are coming in and see how they fit into the already kind of established team. And I think the main thing there is kind of positional play, right? He's going to be very, very focused on positional play and getting the new players kind of accustomed to where they need to be at all times. And then we can kind of see the more expansive stuff later on. Whereas the other players that kind of already been established in this team, like your Cole Palmers, like your Netos, Kugre, or whatever, I think now this is the time where he's going to start saying, hey, okay, you know what position you need to play now. I don't need to tell you. Let's work on some new things. And we got to see a little bit more expansive football is what I'd imagine we see now. And depending on whether LAFC really want to win this game or not, we might have to show them some new things. I spoke about this in a preview way, way before. I think it was the Astana game last season, where I spoke about us having to play professionally and show the team, the lower level team, things that they haven't really seen before, right? Things that they don't come across every single week in the MLS, right? Certain things that Premier League team can do that they will not have seen. And that could very well be a thing that we need to do here. And as I kind of highlighted before, I think the main thing is that we need to put in a really professional performance and just show that quality that we do have. Though we do need to be wary of a certain amount of things about this LAFC team, and I will talk about them now. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about with this LAFC team is that because of this 4-3-3 that they play, or the 4-1-4-1 that we might see, obviously there's a big focus for them on wing play, getting the ball out to the wingers, but not also just the wingers, it's also the fullbacks, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. Getting the ball out to the wingers is something that they want to do pretty much any time they can, especially on this left-hand side. They really like giving the ball to Denny Bouanga. He is just the big danger man for them, and pretty much every game that I've watched of them in the last few weeks as I've been kind of preparing for this game, it's their prerogative is just give him the ball, let him do something. Every single time they play through, it's give him the ball at every opportunity, let him run out fullback, maybe cut onside onto his right foot and get shots away. But the thing is, he is quite a double-sided player, I would like to suggest. I think he's a player that can very well go the other way. One thing about him I have noticed that he loves to do this kind of this very this very interesting thing where he'll go to the byline as if he's going to cross the ball in when he gets to these situations, and then he just shoots at really weird angles, which could definitely be a way of kind of catching us out. We'll have to obviously be wary of that. But again, as I said, it's not just the wingers that we have to worry about, it's the fullbacks. They are very, very happy to commit their fullbacks forward. The left-hand side less so than the right-hand side. This is going to be Hollingshead on this left-hand side, and he is a rather senior player, let's say. He's 34 years old. Again, I know that's a very common thing in the MLS to have quite old players. I know that their captain is in his 30s as well. Obviously, Olivier Giroud up top that I've put here is 38. They do have a lot of aging players, and I'll talk about how that can kind of harm them in a little bit. But one thing that I will give him credit for, and on the other side with Sergi as well, they like to get forward. They like to support the wingers when they get on the ball, and they like to give them options. The danger for us is if we get into situations where we've committed bodies forward and we get into a situation like this, for example, where we've got a fullback faced up. Again, I'm not really worried if James is here, to be fair, because he locks up pretty much every single winger. However, if he is able to kind of get 2v1'd here, one of the things we see quite often from LAFC is that they will fake going inside with Buanga, and the ball will then go the opposite way down the line for a fullback, and then they'll swing the ball in, go for a, again, classic kind of Giroud header, or again, if this is ever Bise, sometimes he'll get on the end of things like that. And another thing is, again, they like to commit bodies forward. It's not just the fullbacks overlapping, although they do that very often. And again, I think the more dangerous fullback is actually their right back. He's a very accurate crosser of the ball from what I've watched as well when he gets high into these positions. But they also love to commit these two central midfielders forward as well. They will get into the box at every opportunity if they do get possession. And this is a team that does like to play with the ball. They're not going to be, even though against us, they're probably going to play a bit more pragmatically. And by that, they probably will be forced to, just in the nature of us keeping the ball better than they will be able to. However, if they do have their spells of possession, I do expect them to try and play actual good football. I think they'll back themselves to be able to do that. Going hand in hand with this good wing play is the fact that they are very, very decent at transitional football, and not just transitional football in the sense of counter-attacking, say a team has committed bodies forward and then they play over the top after winning the ball. They are very, very good at doing that, and again, most of that goes down the wings. What they are very, very good at is picking apart teams that commit players forward when they're kind of defending, and that's something that we do. So this might be something that they try and do against us. Obviously, teams that push their centre backs high up to the kind of halfway line in order to squeeze teams as we kind of press and try and win the ball back, they're actually pretty good against these teams too. Because again, they can just switch a ball from one side of midfield to the wings and go there. They can play the ball up top to a good target man striker like Giroud, and then win the knock on and go forward. That is something that they will look to do. And again, though I don't think this will be particularly successful against us because we are so good at our counter press, we are so good at our press in general, that I think they'll get a bit overwhelmed here. And again, I think there is going to be a giant lapse of quality in the two sides. So though I'm giving them credit where credit is due, I don't think most of these things I speak about will be much of a problem. However, there is one thing that they are actually really, really good at doing, which might cause us issues, and that's set pieces. Obviously, again, Olivier Giroud, fantastic target man. They have Eddie Segura in the back line, who's very, very good from corners. They have a long throw specialist as well, who sometimes plays on this right-hand side of midfield. I forget his name off the top of my head, but I've seen him do that. He can swing the ball in from the right-hand side. I've seen that happen in the last few games. And again, they like to play the ball in, again, with Buanga, who takes a lot of their set pieces from corners. He takes their corners, he takes their free kicks, he takes their penalties. When Giroud's not on the pitch anyway. Giroud usually takes them when he's on the pitch. But yeah, he is actually, again, despite me kind of downplaying his impact, he is their star player. I've said it before, he is their star player. Every single set piece he's on, and for the majority of the time, his balls into the box are pretty good. If we have Sanchez here, I imagine he deals with these. Again, we've seen that Colwill has been quite good aerially in recent times. However, I do fear that maybe the inexperience of Sarr could cost us in those scenarios. Maybe the inexperience of someone like Asugo, if he's defending back there at the time from set pieces, could be an issue. Maybe we see some kind of weakness there. We've seen quite a weakness from set pieces this season, or this season past just gone. Maybe they can exploit that. I think that's the main kind of threat for them, where I think that they will get opportunities against us, is those kind of, they like to do kind of specific set plays from their set pieces. It isn't just like, oh, let's just lump the ball into the box and hope. It's very much they like to go, okay, I'm sending this ball to the back post for a knock on, for a tap in, that type of thing. They look for certain players in order to do that. and it's something they're pretty good at doing. The next thing which I want to talk about is their strikers and the way that they play with their strikers, regardless of who is actually in this central role, whether this is Giroud, whether this is Ebobisse, whether this is Ordaz, Nathan Ordaz, who likes to play in the central role sometimes. One thing they're very, very good at doing is give and goes with their striker. Something that we've seen from our strikers when we usually play Jackson here, and we kind of seen in pre-seasons a lot of the time, that kind of link-up play. They're very, very good at doing this, whether that's with the wingers out wide who kind of come inside to support. So because again, as I spoke about with Bouanga, he's a player that can kind of drift across and play wherever. We kind of see that kind of connection happen with him and the striker quite often, where he kind of bounces off and then goes this way, and he can play it across the pitch, and then they can get a ball into the box. That type of kind of maneuver, but not just with those wingers as well. It's also these midfielders that I spoke about. Again, they do like to get these guys high, and sometimes we get to see these really nice movements where, for example, if a player is being tracked by this centre back, he can pop it off to this centre mid and make a run in behind, and by the time he's already made this run in behind, the ball's already going this way, and they get balls in behind for shots. It's something they're very, very good at doing. I've seen them do it quite often in my research, and it's something they definitely do deliberately. It's not it's not something that they kind of make up on the spot and improvise with. It's something that they're very clearly planned to do. And again, with Ebobisse, who usually plays here the majority of the time, Jeremy, he's that kind of player that can not only run the channels and go in behind, but he can drop deep and help kind of support his midfield to go forward again. And again, that's another thing which we will have to watch out for, because we are a team that likes to press high. We're a team that likes to get tight. And especially this right-hand centre-back, we usually see, obviously, Colwill playing as the kind of more reserved player that stays back, and then the right side of centre-back will obviously be the one that kind of goes forward and be a bit more aggressive. We see that with Wesley Fofana, we see it with Tosin, we see it with Chalobah, who's been playing here. And again, with an inexperienced player like Sarr, if he's tasked to do this role, which was what I've put him in here for, maybe they find success with him getting a bit too overzealous at times and they can play it around. Not sure if that's going to be a thing, but again, that's definitely something we need to watch out for. The final thing which I want to talk about, and the thing which I'm going to kind of give them credit for here, is that their form is very, very strong. They are unbeaten in 9 games in the league. I'm pretty sure that doesn't include all comps. I think that is all league games. They are unbeaten in 9. But that kind of leads me on to their weaknesses. And one thing which I do want to immediately say about that unbeaten in 9 statistic is that it's a little bit misleading. 5 of their last 9 games unbeaten are draws, and they've conceded a lot of goals in that time. I believe 16 goals conceded in 10 matches in all competitions. They are generally quite leaky in the defence, and you can tell from the way that I've been talking about their strengths, a lot of the things have been going forward, and I haven't really spoke about them going backwards yet, because that is their kind of one of their weaknesses, is that they are quite leaky in their defence. In the majority of those draws that they've kind of been having recently, it's not that they've come back to win games or come back to get points, it's that they've dropped multiple goals after going ahead and have let teams back into the game. And that's the thing which they have kind of routinely been doing despite their good form in the league. Obviously they're 5th in the table at the moment. They're very, very good form, but it's a thing that will cost them against a team that is much better, like Chelsea. If they're giving away goals, we will obviously take them. We now have a new hungry striker in the lineup that will be very, very desperate to get off the mark very quickly. If they make any defensive lapses, he's going to be pouncing on them. So that's something that they kind of have to be aware of, that obviously, again, they can't really be making those kind of mistakes. Another thing which I do want to kind of point out is, again, I've spoke about this, but this over reliance on Bouanga to kind of do something is something that I've seen quite often, where, again, because their game plan a lot of the time is just give it to him and hope he does something. If he doesn't do anything, then they do get a bit stagnated at times, and they do kind of stop being able to be as effective, because he is the main danger man. And again, if he is struggling, a lot of the time he likes to get the kind of support from his fullback, and they try and do it that way. But again, a lot of the time the ball does go into him, and if we can shut him down, which I personally think Reece James will be able to do pretty easily. Again, this is a completely different level to the MLS in terms of the defenders, and Reece James is one of the best fullbacks in the world. I don't think he's going to make much of a kind of impact on him, if I'm being honest. And then the question for them is that if this doesn't work and they can't get Bouanga into the game, what do they do from there? they're going to have to play it to other players like Martinez on this right hand side, who again, admittedly, is a very very good young prospect, but it's not quite at the level of the players that he's facing. Again, Giroud's great, but he is past it in terms of his overall kind of game. It's not as good as it used to be, even though he's still a great target man. He still doesn't really have that kind of, pace to impact things, or that spring in his step that he used to have. And I just fear for LA that if they try and force this kind of movement as usual and just say, hey, let's hope that Buanga can do something, and then it doesn't happen, they're going to kind of run out of ideas quite quickly and not really be able to make any inroads against us, except for those set pieces that I mentioned earlier. And the final thing which I want to talk about in terms of their weaknesses, and it's another thing which we can exploit, is these fullbacks. Now, I spoke about Hollinshead earlier and the fact that obviously he is an aging fullback. He's 34 years old, and despite him being a player that does like to get forward and kind of get off the pitch, he's not the paciest. He's not the player that's going to be, making the recovery runs and getting back. And that's the main reason why I've put Madueke on the right side. Now, obviously, there's a big debate usually when we play with Neto and Madueke that who plays on the left-hand side, who plays on the right. Usually, we've been seeing in recent times that anyway, that Madueke has been moving to the left-hand side. He's been playing this way. And though we can do that very well, I just really want to see him back on this right-hand side where he can do what he's best at doing. Taking a fullback for a ride, either going inside and getting shots off, or going around and then getting cutbacks. That's something he's very, very good at doing. And against a fullback that is not the most defensively sound, and for the most part, half the time probably won't even be here because he's too busy committing himself up the pitch, I think Madueke can have an absolute stormer against him. Again, if this is a matter of they've played their way up the pitch and they've got this man kind of committing up high to try and get those overlaps, if we've won the ball back, that ball can go straight to Madueke into all of this space, and he can just, do what he does best, dribble into the box, create cutbacks for Delap, for example, or try and get shots off on goal in and around Lloris. And yeah, I think that that's a very big danger thing for them. Again, also just in general, even though Palencia on this right hand side is much better and much quicker, I think again because of that he's actually more inclined to go forward than he is to go back. And again, if he's committed up the pitch, and if they commit bodies up the pitch in general, which is something they like to do, as I spoke about before, with the centre mids kind of going high as well, they are probably going to be in for a rude awakening, and we are probably going to play it through them very, very easily, get it into space on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side, depending on where that space is vacated, and then quite easily get into the box for cutbacks or crosses or what have you for the lap. And I think, again, this is a game in that whoever is the kind of more clinical and more, productive side is just going to win this. And let's be honest, it's going to be Chelsea. We are going to be the much superior side in this game, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. We've already seen a very big hammering in this tournament with Bayern winning 10-0 against Auckland. I think a similar thing can happen here, and though I don't think we're going to ship that many goals against this team, because again, we are at times a bit wasteful, I could foresee 4, 5, maybe even 6 goals against this club if they do not decide, hey, we're going to be pragmatic. That is the thing. If they do decide to be pragmatic, I think that they're going to stand a much better chance, and that is something that we will have to try and break down. I think Delap is a good option against these pragmatic sides because he's a much better box presence than we've had with Jackson in there or Nkunku in there. So I think we'll still win if they play this way. I think it's just a bit more damage limitation if they do. I think that if they try and play that expansive football, they're just going to get overrun really, really quickly, and we're going to have a pretty big field day. So to summarise, what I kind of want to see Chelsea do in order to exploit these weaknesses and kind of avoid these strengths is what I want us to do, again, as I said before, put in a professional performance, treat the opposition with respect despite me kind of underplaying how their qualities in a little bit in this kind of preview. I want them to, treat them as if they are a better team than they actually are. Not take things for granted. I want us to, be moving the ball quickly, not being lackadaisical, not being silly on the ball, not trying special things and being, being a bit too overzealous at times. I want our press to be very committed as a team. I don't want it to be 1 or 2 presses. I want the whole team to press if we are going to press. I want our counter press to be smart and not just commit loads of bodies forward and hope that we win the ball and then get counted on, because that's something we can suffer from if we do that, again, because again, LAFC are a team that can counter-attack very well on transition. Don't want to risk that happening. And yeah, as I said, the final thing is just to kind of show that quality that we do have. You know, we have really good players in this squad now, and especially these new players like Delap, like Santos, like Sarr, like Asugo. I really would like to see them kind of step up to the plate and say, hey, you know what? I want to force myself into this starting 11. I want to force myself into this first squad, into even if to just be a bench player. I want to kind of force my way into Maresca's plans, because that shows not only the commitment to play for this club, and that's something we want to see, but I think that'll get the best out of every single one of these players. I think if we're going to earmark a certain player for this game in terms of one of the new players, obviously Delap is the kind of main one here. If he can start scoring goals really quickly, that bodes well for the future. But Andre Santos is my pick. I think he's going to have a really, really good game here, and hopefully he can show some of that quality that we've seen in Ligue 1 throughout the last season. Now, I will be streaming a live watch-along tonight on this channel for this game and many of the other games in this tournament too, so come say hi if you don't want to miss out. That will start at 7:30 PM British Summer Time. If you enjoyed the video, please leave it a like, it really helps out the channel, and for more previews like this in the future, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, football could be as simple as black and white.
Something ain't right, I'm drowning in the ocean. I'm still alive, but I feel the fall in my ocean. I lost the fight and now I'm finally floating, but I still try to hide my emotion. Who am I in pieces? I've been broken. It's black and white, but my eyes are fine.